Welcome back! I'm so glad you're here. In part 1, we finished cutting our pieces, sewing the arms, legs, and body, and got everything prepped. If you haven't watched part 1 yet, go ahead and click on that now and come back when you're ready. Now let's jump right into part 2. Grab your sewing supplies, get cozy, and let's start sewing. Once the body is stuffed to your liking, it's time to attach the arms. Pin both arms into place at the shoulders, making sure they line up evenly with the top of the body. Starting from the back opening, thread your needle over to the first arm. You'll want to sew this arm in place before moving to the second arm. Use an X stitch or secure a knot to make sure the arm stays firmly in place. Once the first arm is secure, you can move on to the second arm and repeat the same process to stitch it firmly in place. After sewing down the second arm, connect it to the first arm by stitching back and forth between them a few times. This will ensure they are securely attached while still allowing the arms to move up and down freely. Once both arms are securely attached, take the final thread from the last arm and pull it up through the back opening. Make sure to pull upward. This is going to tighten the arms evenly, and tie it off securely at the top of the opening. Now it's time to work on the head. Start by preparing the face. I like to use the front of the head pattern to cut out the eyes and lips. This creates a guide that helps me accurately position and trace the face onto the fabric. In this tutorial, I'm using the machine embroidered look for my doll. This can be purchased separately from Cozy Clover apart from the Heidi Doll sewing pattern. As an alternative, you can trace the face onto the fabric and use fabric markers or paint to create your doll's face at no extra cost. When tracing the front of the head pattern, make sure to clearly mark where the ears will go. I like to draw my lines about 1/4 of an inch into the pattern so I know exactly where to attach the ears later. For the back of the head pattern, take 2 pieces of fabric with the good sides facing each other. Then trace the back of the head on the top. I like to trace the dotted sewing line, which is about 1/4 of an inch from the edge of the back of the head pattern, directly onto the fabric, and then I sew right along that line. However, you can also cut these 2 pieces out first and then sew them together with that 1/4 inch seam allowance. This is just my preferred method, but whichever way you choose, just make sure you leave the space marked open, unsewn, so you can turn the head right side out once it's finished. Next, I'm going to pin the ears to the front of the head pattern so I can see how they'll lay once it's sewn together with the back of the head. You can either pin them in place or lightly sew them down, it's totally up to you. Once everything is positioned, pin the back of the head to the front with the good sides facing each other, then sew all along the inner perimeter of the face. Before turning your finished head right side out, you're going to want to create more slits into the fabric into the inseam to create a more rounded look. You definitely want to do this for the head since it's one of the roundest and prettiest parts of the doll. Once you've turned the head right side out, it's time to start stuffing. How tightly you stuff your head will really affect its final look. A firmer, fuller stuffing will give the head a rounder shape and more structure. I'd recommend stuffing it as full as possible, as this will help the head sit sturdily whenever we sew it onto the neck later. Now it's time to prep the body to sew on the head. I like to use a pencil, pen, or stuffing tool to push the neck and give it a sturdier structure. This helps the head sit nicely and evenly when pinning it in place. I also keep the back opening unsewn while attaching the head. This way, once the head is secured, I can add a bit more stuffing to the neck and ensure it's firm and well supported before sewing up the back. The last thing you need to do is to ladder stitch all the way around the head and neck area. In spots that I feel like need a little extra support, I'll go back and forth a few times for added structure. Then I take my needle and push it up through the neck and at the very top of the head, and tie an X stitch at the top. This little detail helps give the head some extra stability. After you stitch the head onto the neck, it's a great time to add a little more stuffing in the back opening. This extra support is important because the hair will attach later, add some weight to the head, and a well-stuffed neck will ensure everything stays stable and well-balanced. Once you've finished stuffing the neck and it feels sturdy and well supported, go ahead and ladder stitch up the back opening. This is the final step in finishing the doll's body, ensuring everything is secure, neat, and ready for the next stage. When finishing off your ladder stitch, you can pull the thread through the body and cut it so it's hidden inside. If you'd like, you can add a little belly button here with a knot or stitch where the thread comes through. I don't add one to this doll, but it's definitely a cute option that you could do. Take a moment to celebrate because you've finished the doll's body and it's looking wonderful. Now let's add some hair to bring it all together with a little extra flair. Here are the materials I'm using to make the hair wefts. One key item is the piece of cardboard, about 8 inches by 4 inches to wrap the yarn around. I like to cut a small notch on one edge of the cardboard. It helps hold the yarn securely in place as I start wrapping. Make sure to wrap the yarn pretty tight close together around the cardboard so you get a nice even length of hair for your doll. Once you've wrapped the yarn to the length that you need on the cardboard, about 4 inches wide, it's time to cut down the middle. You can tie a piece of yarn at the top, keeping everything in place, but honestly I don't always do that. I usually just hold it steady and carefully cut through the middle. After cutting your hair weft, you have the option to place tape on both sides of the middle to help keep everything in place while you're sewing. I usually skip this step though. I just hold it steady and keep it tight as I sew. It's a little quicker and avoids any risk of the tape pulling the yarn, but it's totally an option, especially for beginners. You just want to make sure that you keep the hair together as you sew. Once you've finished your first hair weft, you're going to make another one and repeat the exact same steps. However, before sewing, divide the yarn into 2 sections, one with about 1/3 of the hair and the other with the remaining 2/3. We're going to start with the longest hair weft first and use its seam as a guide to position it just above the seam on the very top of the doll's head. You may want to pin it down so it's easy to see exactly where you're going to place the first hair weft. After pinning the weft in place, you're going to want to take the first section of the hair, which will fall over the face, and tie it up. Then we'll start working on the back section first. Using your glue gun, start by gluing the hair weft from one ear to the other, right along the very top of the seam. Then work your way down the back of the head, gluing line by line and gently pressing the hair into place as you go. Stop about 3/4 of the way down the head. This leaves room for styling like a low ponytail to still look cute and natural. Now you can untie the front section of the hair weft. Fold it over the back section and glue it down, focusing on covering any gaps or areas left uncovered by the first half. Make sure to press it down smoothly as you glue it so it lays flat and even. The goal here is to ensure the back of the head is fully covered. Now take the medium-sized hair weft and position it where the seam becomes the doll's hair part. Pin it in place to keep it secure, then sew it from front to back. You can use a little hot glue to fill in some gaps or any loose areas, but the key here is to ensure that when it's sewn, it creates a natural-looking hair part for the doll. As you can see here, I'm pointing out a few areas you might want to glue down. With this second hair weft, focus mostly on the top section. Avoid gluing too far down the head as it can disrupt the natural flow of the hair. Instead, check the sides and hot glue any loose pieces as needed. Lastly, we'll attach the final mini hair weft to the front. This piece focuses on creating a natural looking part by sewing it down and covering any of the remaining areas in the front that may need it. You could still use a bit of hot glue here to secure it in place, but at this stage, the focus should really be on keeping the hair flowing naturally and loosely. Your doll's hair is almost complete. Now it's time to trim the ends to an even straight line. How short or how creative you want to go is totally up to you. Personally, I like to cut just enough to even out the bottom while still leaving plenty of length for hairstyles. This is just my method for attaching yarn hair, but feel free to adjust it for your own style. With this setup, your doll can have its hair down, in a low ponytail, half up, or low pigtails. It's a flexible option for styling. Congratulations, you've completed your Cozy Clover Heidi doll. Thank you so much for joining me and supporting my work. I hope you love your doll as much as I love sharing this with you. I can't wait to bring you more cozy patterns and tutorials soon. Until next time, stay cozy.